Hey, what's going on, guys? Rum Gaming here, back into the video. Today's episode, we are doing our very first Cataclysm guide, and it's going to be on the Fire Mage. So to get started here, we will dive into the pros first. So we have a very fluid rotation in both single target and AOE, high AOE potential, a very fun play style, especially since it's proc based with Hot Streak. Super fun to play around, very high mobility due to Scorch. We got Blink, got a whole bunch of different ways to kind of maneuver around. And we also have a pretty good raid buff. We do get introduced to Time Warp in Cata, so that's very strong. And if for whatever reason your raid comp doesn't have a Lust, well, if you have a Mage now, then you get access to Lust. Now for the cons, right, we don't have a ton of survivability outside of Cauterize. Then it requires quite a bit of stats for us to scale well in the damage department. And we'll see this a little bit more once you start talking about haste, how haste kind of synergizes with our kit. Critical strike, we'll get into that here in just a minute. A little bit of RNG, right, with Hot Streak procs. And then it's a little bit difficult to min-max our AOE, right? There's actually two phases in our rotation. We'll kind of talk about like a burst AOE phase. And then if the fight lasts longer, we do have like a prolonged rotation, which is just a little bit different from the burst rotation. Just overall, how Fire Mage feels. I think we have it when things go right and you get a lot of procs. I think it's one of the most fun specs in the game. You know, you just get hot streak procs over and over and over. It just feels great to play. But when you don't get those procs, it feels kind of awkward. It doesn't feel right. So that can kind of make it a little odd to play. Again, we do have pretty high mobility, right? We can Scorch while on the move. That's pretty nice. So basically what this means is we're not losing uptime. So it takes a lot of that hard casting out of our rotation. And if you need to move, you can still be doing damage while moving. So really nice to have that. So just kind of overall, Fire Mage is very similar to Wrath. We didn't really reinvent ourselves here in Cata. We got really good single target. We got really good AoE and cleave. The rotation did change slightly. And then there were some changes to stats in regards to intellect, haste, and mastery. So intellect now grants spell power. Haste is now going to increase the frequency of our dots, and then mastery is going to increase the damage of our dots. And just kind of overall, I think the Fire Mage is a very sought after class in Cata. It just takes a little while for us to get there. We got to get the gear to kind of scale. So initially we will be a little bit weak, but we will eventually get there as you start to gear out. So we do have a bunch of ability changes here, and not going to read all of them out. It should take 10 minutes to read all this stuff out. But overall, it just improved on some of the shortcomings from Fire and Wrath of the Lich King. Now, one thing that is really neat is improved Hot Streak. So it's going to remain the exact same as it did. But now it's going to lead into another talent that lets Pyroblast proc Hot Streak as well. So this is really strong, right? Because now we can kind of chain Pyroblast and we can just keep proccing this Hot Streak over and over. We also have Firestarter, so this is going to allow us to cast Scorch while on the move. That's going to be very strong. And then we also have some changes here with Living Bomb. So it has a limit of 3 targets. And basically what you're wanting to do is you're wanting to stack all the dots that you can on a single target. Pair that with Combust. And then you're going to spread that with Fire Blast. So you're going to stack a whole bunch of dots on a target, Combust, then Fire Blast, and all those dots that you have on that target is just going to spread out for insane AoE damage. Now, one thing to note here, before you can spread those dots, you do have to have an impact proc. Then Combust is also getting reworked. So instead of this just giving a 10% crit chance, now it's going to do X amount of damage based on how many dots you have on a target. So the more targets that you have, the more dots that you have out, the more damage that Combust does overall. Okay, then for stats, what we're going to focus on now is Intellect, right? We get all that spell power from Intellect, so we're going to focus on it. You're going to get your hit to 17%. So you want to get to 17%. That way you never miss an enemy that's 3 levels higher than your own. So like raid boss level. Now haste does change a little bit. So haste has 2 effects, right? It's going to provide extra casting speed to our spells. And it's going to provide a faster ticking rate to our dots. So anything like Pyroblast, Ignite, or Living Bomb. So the first thing you want to focus on, right, is getting that hit to 17%. Once you get there, then you can focus on Haste. Now, Haste kind of has 2 I guess you could say main breakpoints, and one's going to be at 15% and one's going to be at 25%. At 15%, you get an extra tick of combustion, and then at 25%, you get 3 extra ticks of combustion. So this is very, very important, right? Because combustion is a huge part of our damage. So you want to get as many combustion ticks as you possibly can. So your first goal, 17% hit. Second goal, 15% haste. Third goal, 25% haste. Then after you get this, then you can start funneling stats into crit. So this could be our single target rotation. We do have really good burst in Cata in both single target and AOE. So just to kind of read through the rotation, we're going to precast Pyroblast. We're going to keep up Living Bomb, and then we want to make sure that we let it explode, right? We don't want to recast it and not let that damage go off. We're going to spam Fireball. Then we're going to try to fish for these Hot Streak procs. When we get a Hot Streak proc, then we're going to instant cast Pyroblast. Now, once you get these 3 dots up, right? Pyroblast, Living Bomb, Ignite, you're going to make sure you have all 3 up. Then you want to cast Combustion. From here, after Combustion's cast, or if for whatever reason you have to move, you want to go into a Flame Orb, and you just want to repeat this process over and over for single target. And of course, if you have to move once again, then you have Scorch that you can kind of fall back on so you don't lose any uptime. Okay, then our AOE rotation here, we have it split between 2 phases. You got a burst phase and then kind of a long AOE phase. So if targets are living, if you have a raid boss that has a whole bunch of targets are going to live for a while, then you'll probably use this second rotation down here at the bottom. So both rotations are actually very similar. The only thing that's really changing is Combust. So Combust if Ignite has been refreshed, and Living Bomb is up on a target, and then the Pyroblast dot if you get a hot streak. So if you take this section out, and then also the Living Bomb section right here, they're pretty much the same rotations, right? Nothing else has really changed. So if it is a long AoE encounter, just make sure you're spreading out as many Living Bombs on up to 3 targets and just following this combustion logic here. Then for our talents, not much really changes here. You could put a couple points into something like Arcane Concentration if you're running into mana issues. You could take that out of something like Improved Scorch. But for the most part, these talents are set in stone for both AoE and single target. That's going to give you pretty much everything that you need for any type of content, for any type of PvE content. So yeah, these are pretty much going to be the talents that we're running universally for PvE content. So not a whole bunch changing here. Now for the glyphs, these are going to be, in Cata, we have prime, major, minor glyphs. So for your prime glyphs, you're going to do Glyph of Fireball. So this is going to increase the damage of our Fireball spell by 5%. Pyroblast is going to increase the crit chance of our Pyroblast by 5%. Molten Armor, it's going to give us an additional 2% critical strike rating. Then for our major glyphs here, we have Glyph of Evocation. So this is going to allow us to regen 40% of our health over its duration. Glyph of Blink increases the range of our blink by 5 yards. And Glyph of Dragon's Breath going to reduce the cooldown of our Dragon's Breath by 3 seconds. Then these are going to be our minor glyphs down here at the bottom. Not going to read them out because they're not that impactful, but these are typically the ones that are run. All right, guys, and then these are going to be the gems and enchants that we are going to be running. Enchants aren't going to change for the most part. And then in terms of gems, you can kind of move some gems around based on whether you need haste or crit. All right, guys, that's going to be the end of this video. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. We'll see you on the next one.